welcome everybody. This is having done all the principles of co-creative TA. We're now getting into some of the applications of it and looking at some of the models that Keith and Graham put in their original paper and other things that have emerged since then. So it's getting probably more interesting now in terms of application than just looking at principles. So I know some of you have been to previous sessions. Some of you have been to lots of previous sessions. So it's nice to see you again. And some of you, I think, it's probably your first time. So I'm Paul Robinson. I'm based in Ipswich, and I do my TA supporting adults to learn. So I'm an educational PTSTA, and I use co-creative TA and have been doing for years. So that's why we teamed up with Graham and Keith and some of our colleagues to put this program on. So it's nice to see you here.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that. It's really lovely to see you. And my name's James Sweeney, for those who don't know me. I work just south of Tunbridge Wells, and I have a therapy practice. I supervise, and my teaching is around working with people as they get ready to do their CTA exams. So that's my teaching. Prior to that, I've taught in a variety of other places. Yeah, and co-creative TA is really important. I use it throughout my work. It's the basis of my work. And like Paul, I've been using it for a long time too. So that's me.
So, go on, James.
I was just going to say, where do you want to start then, Paul?
Well, do you guys want to say hello and just give us a little, snapshot of what you know about co-creative TA, just so that we know how to pitch it. And to save you all fighting to go first, I'll do the as it is on my screen. So Karen is the next on my screen, and then Jonathan. So Karen, can you say hello?
Hello. I didn't manage to get onto the earlier workshop, so I've got to say I know very little. I'm very familiar with, I'm familiar with the term co-creation, but I've never attended any workshops. So I hope it will make sense to me joining in when you've already done one workshop. I feel like I'm joining in halfway, but
okay.
Hopefully it'll be fun and I'll learn lots.
Okay, and all the previous workshops are freely available on the UCATA website.
Yeah.
Jonathan and Jenny.
Hi. Very similar situation. Again, my reading on it is a bit in the dim and distant. So yes, I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes today. But very much a kind of interested party.
Thanks, Jonathan. Jenny, and then Sparkles.
I'm Jenny. I live in Suffolk. I met Paul about 17 years ago now, and had the privilege of training with him and working with him over the past few years. My interest is adult education. My last career, I've had several, has been as an IT consultant and trainer. And my up and coming career, I hope, is to be a TA practitioner. In practice, I mean, I'm a contractual trainee now, education, with Paul as my supervisor. So I'm making that commitment. And although I do use TA in my training, I want for my own purposes to get a qualification. Co-creative TA. I mean, I wouldn't worry, Karen. I know about CCTA. I've done some, listened to some workshops. I've done some reading, and I'm coming to learn even more tonight. because for me, TA is about absorbing it and being it, not just looking at the models. And I'm my process is step by step. Pleased to be here.
Thanks, Jenny. Sparkles, then Tonya.
Hi. Yeah, I've done quite a few of the workshops on this series. I've been really enjoying them, and I was mighty miffed I couldn't get a place on the integrating adult for Friday because they all went because the conference probably was and probably the most popular of the workshops. So I shall be watching the video for that. And yeah, I've really been enjoying learning the principles. I loved the workshop that I did at the conference and the opening speech. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to this tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Sparkles. Tonya, then Jane.
Oh, I'm out of practice with the Zoom now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So yes, I'm in my third year of my advanced TA training at Iron Mill in Exeter. And as far as co-creative TA goes, we have looked at that in quite some detail, and I really have enjoyed it. At the conference, I think I've got sort of, can't remember, it was last year actually, the online conference. I did the workshop with Paul on co-creative TA, and I also attended the first two sort of introduction to with Keith and Graham online, however many months ago it is now. So yes, it's just really looking for, I haven't been able to do a lot of these because there are times of the day when I can't make it, but when I see that they're on in the evening, I jump in, and luckily I was able to do this one. So yeah, really happy to be here, really looking forward to learning some more. Yes.
Thanks, Tonya. Jane, and then Sandra.
Hello, hi everybody. It's Jane Kibblewright here. I was lucky enough to get on Fridays, so I feel I'm kind of revisiting co-creational TA because I met it a number of years ago, and I'm rethinking about it and updating really. I'm a PTS TA, and I'm interested in the clinical application of thinking about the integrating adult and how we do that using, as I said earlier on the Friday, thinking about looking at the deconfusion of the child and the adult. I think that happens. I'm just playing with some ideas. So welcome. I know a couple of you and met a few of you before. So yeah, hi.
Thanks, Jane. Sandra, then Alan.
I'm Sandra. I'm in private practice psychotherapy in Manchester. I'm writing my CTA. I've managed to do a fair number of these, both online like this one, and I attended some of them at the conference, which I also really enjoyed. So although I'm dipping in and out a lot, I still feel like I know nothing. So, you know, I should just keep going.
Right, and you've got your voice tonight, Sandra. Thank you.
I do, yes, thank you. Yay!
So, Alan and then Paul.
Hello everyone, yeah, my name's Alan and I'm based in Edinburgh at the moment. I'm just coming to the end of my foundation year in TA training. So we've just really been covering the basics, but I was really excited when I heard about the integrating adult, and I was lucky enough to join the session on Friday. The little bit I'm just dipping my toes in, the little bit I have read about co-creative TA, you know, it's really quite exciting. I like it, so I'm just really want to learn as much as I can tonight.
Thanks for your excitement. It definitely came across.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Paul, then Chidel.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I've been to a couple of these sort of on and off when I can, and and it really resonates with me, which is why I keep coming back to it. And I just love the idea of the integrated adult. It just really makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, would have liked to have done the one on Friday, but yeah, just things didn't pan out. And yeah, really glad I could get to this one today. Good to see you all.
Nice to see you again, Paul. Chidel and then Kieran.
Hello, it's lovely to see so many people from before, so that's great. I'm really enjoying the workshops. I'm in the 3rd year advanced training in clinical practice, and I'm a TAC. And I'm beginning to regret having told everybody at conference how great these were, because now it's really hard to get on. But they are great workshops, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Chidel. Your internet seems a bit unstable, but we did manage to catch everything. It's okay. Kieran, then Suzanne, sorry.
Hi, I'm Kieran. I'm a foundation student at the Link Centre in TA. I attended one early, like I guess back in November maybe. So I'm just kind of attending lots of workshops and trying to kind of absorb the language and the concepts as I learn them. So I really enjoyed the first one I was at, because it was kind of different variations of some of the diagrams and things we learned about in foundation. There were sort of like variations, and yeah, so I'm just here to kind of absorb, as I say, just sort of pick up the bits I can understand and, you know, just enjoy it as I get more and more understanding, I guess.
Right. Thanks, Kieran. Suzanne and then Harple. You muted, Suzanne.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Susanna. Apologies for being a bit late. Yeah, like many other people, I really wanted to attend the integrating adult one, but missed it. I blinked till it was gone. Yeah, I come to whatever I can because they're really interesting workshops. Thank you for putting them on. I'm a nurse, and I am also just submitted my CTA. I started training at Wealden and then went to Metanoia, where I'm finishing off there. And yeah, I've just got my fingers and toes crossed, but let's see.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. Is it Susanna? Susanna?
My name is Susanna. It's German, so it's pronounce the E.
The E. Okay. Harple, if you're there, do you want to check in with us? Here we go.
Right. First of all, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm struggling with 2 bags and I haven't got into the house yet. So I'll just pause for a second and talk. Well, I'm always excited to do these workshops because they seem so organic and I never know what's going to happen. But I always leave with something wonderful, even if I do forget at the end. But I make so many notes. So what I wanted to say was I'm on the educational TA, really enjoying it. But I've captured that as part of my assignments as well. I'm going to do an assignment on co-creation and education myself. And so every little bit I can grasp from this, especially the words transformation, because I feel I've transformed after doing this course. I mean, I haven't finished it yet, but the co-creation bit is very important in the line of work. So it all seems to make sense. So that's the place where I'm coming from. And I'm looking forward to seeing what changes I can implement in my workplace as well, because I do feel I'm certainly going through the changes and it's not just my age. So at that note, I shall stop there and try and get into my house. But thank you for listening and bearing with me. And I'll be up there to show my face in a minute.
Okay, thanks.
Look forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
Right, so should we just do a quick once through the principles, just for those who are joining for the first or second time?
Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, do you want to go or should I?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
So the 4 the 4 principles, the first one is about we-ness. And the co-creative view of we-ness is very different from maybe a more classical way of we-ness. More classically, when we look at we-ness, we think of symbiosis, and we think of that in quite a pathological way. And we think of we-ness as our capacity to be in contact with each other, and in particular in contact in quite a particular way, in a way that's non-defensive, and where we can actually be present with each other. And if any of you want to sort of say anything or interrupt or ask anything while we're doing this, please do. Yeah. So that's anything. Anyone okay? Everyone okay with that? Do you want to say anything else about it, Paul?
I suppose the only thing is the we-ness in co-creative TA is that the sum of the two of us is more than what we have individually. So it's like a 2-person plus psychotherapy. Yeah. So the space that the field that we generate enables us to access resource that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's sort of also open, it gives a sort of a sense of reality to, a constructed field between the two of us that Keith and Graham talk about. Yeah.
So the next one is shared responsibility, which again in co-creative TA is not that we share it in the same way. It's a shared but not equal responsibility. And the responsibility switches from one to the other or to different people in the group. So we take responsibility for different things or some things at sometimes, and so it's like doing a dance with responsibility. So it's not like James mentioned symbiosis in we-ness, when the responsibility is always with one of the people. Whereas in co-creative TA, that responsibility, that symbiosis changes depending on the circumstances. So we generate a healthy symbiosis, not a one-way symbiosis.
Yeah. And also it's a way of bringing yourself into the room, and so inviting you all, for example, to take responsibility for what you want to learn tonight, and to engage in asking for what you want. So it's a very different way of being present in the room. So Paul and I for sure have a responsibility for what we present and bringing stuff, but also you have a responsibility on the other side of bringing yourself into the room, because you all have a lot to give. You're all adults, you've all got lots of experience, lots of knowledge, and all of that's really important to bring into the room. And the advantage is that we can all benefit from what we all know, not just, for argument's sake, Paul and I.
We only know what we know. We don't know what you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Enough on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And present-centered relating is the third part. And present-centered relating for me is very much about how we're going to be together, because this is about us noticing ourselves in the room, and noticing when we're in the present and when we might be in the past, and maybe noticing what's happening for other people. But really important to sort of have that sense, am I in the present? Am I present-centered? Am I an integrating adult? Or have I slipped back into an archaic ego state where I'm replaying something from the past? And really important to invite you all to notice this, because it's really significant towards learning. Today, the subject is about transformational learning, and this can actually get in the way of the learning, but it can also act as a way of learning, because the noticing will enable you to learn. Yeah. So present-centered relating, and it's the way of being with each other. Yeah. Paul?
Yeah, I think one of the things is about present-centeredness that we often talk about, we're in our adult ego state, and we're very rarely actually in our adult ego state, because we are so used to running rackets and playing games and being defensive. So we're so used to it, we don't know when we're being defensive. So it's really difficult. It takes a lot of energy to be in our integrating adult ego state in particular, because we are really aware of what's going on around us. And we're really aware of what's going on in our intrapsychic processes. So we become aware of the archaic pulls and the transferences and the projections that we're putting on and the fantasies that are not real.
So would you
go on, Jen?
would you say then that I feel uncomfortable about talking about being integrated? I understand integrating and I see it as a process. And I'm not sure when I might be integrated, and whether it would be quite dangerous for me to think that I am.
Yeah, and even when we are in our integrating adults and we are integrated, or we think we're integrated, we still don't know what's being defended.
And almost by definition, I mean, as James was pointing out about, where am I in the room now and what's archaic, I was aware of all sorts of things going on in my head. I hadn't quite been aware that I was, I'm in the room, but there are lots of thoughts that are tangential. And I think I'm always like that.
Yeah.
So in some ways, that archaic stuff, because we've been so used to it from being small, and it's actually brilliant for us because we don't have to work everything out every time we encounter it. So the patterns that we have built up are really helpful because we can get on with other things without having to. When every time you sit down to dinner, you don't look at your knife and fork and wonder what the hell they are. You just pick them up and use them. So they're really useful, these patterns, but they do get in the way.
Yeah. And that picks up a sort of an important point about co-creative TA, which is wanting to shift the focus away from just pathology to what Keith Tudor calls sanology, healthy, thinking about what is health, what's a healthy way of being. And so there's quite a focus within co-creative TA on healthy processing. And of course, scripts can be positive. And as Paul will no doubt tell you, if you ask, he'll tell you about positive games.
Yeah. So are we done on that one? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
The fourth one is one that I picked up and wrote about in TAJ article a couple of years ago, which is mutual positive regard, which was always within what Keith and Graham wrote about, but they never. So it was always explicit, but they never brought it out and made it. Sorry, it was always implicit, but they didn't bring it out and make it explicit. And for me, the positive regard is more than okayness. Yeah. So it's I'm okay, you're okay, they're okay, we're okay. And actually, we're more than okay. It's about being more positive. And that really comes from Carl Rogers' view of unconditional positive regard, about where actually you're not just okay, you're actually rooting for your student or you're rooting for your client. Yeah. So you're more than just okay. My wife often asks me, how are you today, Paul? And I'll say, I'm okay. And she'll say, well, what does that mean? I said, well, I'm okay. And then she decided she was going to put a scale of 1 to 10 and ask me where I was on the scale. So it's now, you know, I said, if I'm okay, I'm on 5. Yeah. And if I feel really good, I'm a 6 or a 7. And, you know.
Yeah.
So to me, the positive regard is more than okay. It's an impetus. It's physis, really, rather than just benign.
Yeah, and it's also being able to see yourself and others as okay, just as they are. So even if you're feeling defensive, that is okay to feel defensive, and really good if you can notice that and, you know, and have positive regard towards it and be curious about it. Yeah, that's important. There's something about having compassion on how we are.
And it's not just mutual. The mutual bit is about, we often treat other people as okay and notice their okayness, and we support people and root for people. How often do we root for ourselves? So it's about the positive regard. It's about holding ourselves in positive regard and not discounting ourselves. So not running the rackets about, you know, I'm not really important, am I? Yeah, I always get it wrong. Yeah. So it's about, you know, not blaming ourselves and actually saying, I'm okay, you know, I'm doing the best I can. I might not always get it right, but, you know. So it's about this self-compassion as well.
And that actually has a significant application in terms of how within co-creative TA we do think of decontamination and deconfusion. And in fact, we think of clients self-decontaminating and self-deconfusing. Yeah. So we'll maybe talk more about that later if you want to.
Is that okay? Has that brought you sort of up to speed? And because we will be referring to these principles throughout the session, so it's useful just to remind people, or if you're new to it, just to remind you what they actually are.
And they are, in a way, the contract for the sort of work we're going to do this evening. They are our way of being tonight.
Can I ask I'd like to ask a question. Just what you're talking to me about, I feel, is ordinary tenets of working alliance and therapeutic stance, the fundamentals. So it's not really exclusive to co-creational TA, really, is it? Or is it, in your mind?
I think you can talk about it in using lots of different ways and different modalities, and it's, you know, it would resonate very much with the person-centered way of working. There are significant differences, I think, from a philosophical point of view in the approach of co-creative TA if you were then looking at a modality which was functioning more from a psychoanalytic and more interpretive perspective, where it's more of a, using Martha Stark's different psychologies, you know, co-creative TA sees itself working very much from a 2-person plus psychology, whereas some other modalities might work from a 1.5 person, maybe Erskine's work, or maybe 1 person, a classical Burnian way of working, and a psychoanalytic way of working. And actually, philosophically, that's very different from a co-creative way of working. Does that help? And that's only a way of looking at it from me. I'm sure Paul will have a completely different way of looking at it, as will others of you.
Thanks, James. I think you clarified it a bit. I think I was thinking behind the therapeutic alliance behind whatever modality, but I can see the emphasis is keeping that in, say, from a psychoanalytic, it should be the basis and the starting point. But I can imagine, I know from working psychoanalytically that it has a different, it's in a way a different emphasis, I suppose. Yeah.
It's a different emphasis because the emphasis shifts from the therapist to the client.
Yeah.
There is a
get you.
philosophic difference there.
Yeah, but the underlying tenet of them all would be the same, but the emphasis is different. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Okay, so we'll just say that we will take a break around halfway through. Just yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need to take a break before then, please do so.
And if you want to ask a question, just do so.
Yeah. And we've got 2.5 hours, or 2 hours left now. So our plan is to have a dialogue around transformational learning and change. So to sort of introduce you to our thoughts around it, and please do ask questions, give us comments, ask us further explanations, further discussions as we go through.
Yeah. And in effect, just join in when you want to.
Yeah. Because we only know what we know about it, and we've got our views. Yeah. And they might be completely wrong. But hopefully they won't be completely wrong, but you might have something that you can add.
Yeah, or some practical observation about what might happen in practice and how would it work, or what you have, or maybe the experiences you have had that really don't gel with this at all. So you will have very different perspectives, and they're all welcome. And is that where you want to start, Paul, with perspectives?
By all means, go and carry on, James.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I think the key starting point here, I think, is about, the Schiffian idea of frame of reference, how we see the world through a frame of reference. And that frame of reference, of course, can be pathologically scripty to varying degrees. And it acts as a way in which we respond to our experience. And I guess transformational learning is about finding a way of moving away from this. And of course, it's another way of talking about working with script, but maybe we won't quite go there at the moment. Paul?
Yeah, I think it really is important about just defining the word transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So the definition of a transformation is a change in your frame of reference. Yeah, because it means you're going from something to something else. So your experience, your knowledge, your understanding transforms. You either get rid of something and replace it with something else, or you deepen your understanding and you take it to the next level. Yeah. So you won't necessarily change if you're doing it, taking it to the next level. You're building on it, but it does change your frame of reference because you know more about it now. Yeah. So something has got to either change or be added to.
Yeah. And it can of course be material around your own sense of self, and of course it can be about other aspects of learning and other content of learning. But in a way, if you think about it, if you learn something by rote, it won't change your frame of reference. Whereas if you integrate what you're learning and your frame of reference changes, it becomes part of you. Yeah. So transformation is about enabling what you're learning to become part of you, whether that be mathematics or whether it be thinking about your capacity for self-reflection and So
So, and we're going to refer to Jack Meziro's work as the core for tonight. And he wrote about transformational learning being the precursor to transformational change.
Yeah.
So in
Sorry,
a learning,
Paul.
sorry,
Who was that?
Jack Meziro. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a if you Google him, there's loads of stuff. He's Canadian, and he's been writing for many years. Lots of books, lots of articles, and the best one to get is a book that he came out with in 2002, Transformational Learning. Jack Meziro and Associates. Oh, there you go. Learning is transformation. It's not the easiest book to read.
Well, it's from the field of learning and teaching. It doesn't come from a psychotherapy field or an organizational field. It comes from an educational field, of course. That's for sure. But it is not TA, and has lots and lots of links into the work of people like Steiner, of Paulo Freire. It's huge links into lots and lots of different areas of education.
And if you didn't know that he wasn't TA literate, you would think he was.
Yeah.
Because of the process.
Yeah. Or even co-creative aware. Because actually, as far as he's concerned, transformational learning depends on intersubjectivity, which is the ground of co-creative TA.
So, if we work from the basis that hello, Jenny.
I just wanted, I'd just like you to explain intersubjectivity to me, please.
I think if you go back to the basis of co-creative TA, where Keith Tudor and Graham Summers talk about the intersubjective field, that when two people or a group of people meet, there is a connection between them all. And what's brought there is everything that each person is, and also the context of their lives are also brought into the room. And this constitutes what is called an intersubjective field. And it is co-created by the people present.
So the subject is the person?
Well, it's not the person, it's the field.
Okay.
It's the field, it's what's going on. For example, we are all present here at the moment and we are connected to each other. And that is another reality by itself. And what we're taking from it, we construct. The other basis of co-creative TA is constructivism. And that we will all make meaning from what we're hearing here. And the meaning we make is around what is going on in the intersubjective field.
Well, that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I think if you see some of, is it Debbie's drawing, Debbie Robinson, your wife's drawing, Paul, with the loops? Or is that
that's
Graham?
That's Graham.
That's Graham. He draws a loop around the integrating adult.
Like an infinity sign.
Like an infinity sign. And if you think of the middle of that as the intersubjective space, I think a friend of ours, Nicole Lenner. Nicole Lenner.
No, you're just name dropping now, James.
draws something quite different, which she draws it looping around like that and capturing a space between the two and naming that the intersubjective space.
Okay. Well, thank you, James.
You're welcome.
Where have we got to? I've lost track now. Thanks, Jen.
Well, the preamble was creative learning depends on intersubjectivity, and that's when I was pondering the word.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we'll get on and we'll explore that in some more detail shortly, I think, won't we?
Yeah. So we were talking about Mesereau, weren't we?
Yeah.
So he was commissioned by the US in the 60s, I think, or 70s, to do some research on women returners to work in professional roles after having maternity leave. Because it was that time when it was becoming more normal practice for women not having a profession and then having children and then coming back into professional careers. Yeah. And there were a lot of people that didn't make it. So the US government wanted to find out why it wasn't happening. So they commissioned Mesereau to do this research. And what he noticed was the ones that succeeded in getting back to the same sort of professional roles did something different to the ones that failed. And he generated a 10-point process that mapped across from this is what would enable people to be more successful in returning to their professional careers, which was about a process where they learned and changed and did things that enabled them to get back. And the process is very much about the link with co-creative TA. So it's very much linked to being present-centered, very much linked to self-compassion, positively noting and believing in ourselves, sharing the responsibility in terms of I can't do this on my own. I need some support and some help, and maybe I need to acknowledge that I may need to update my skills. So there's a lot of co-creative TA built into the process. James?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's also quite a political dimension to it, because part of it is about beginning to stand back from, say, your frame of reference, or maybe somebody else's frame of reference, maybe the frame of reference of the society you're in, and beginning to critique it. Yeah. And it's very much about being able to critique the assumptions on which your life is based, or maybe on which society is based, and begin to come together with others and air that critique and share it with others. And of course, that means, this process is very challenging towards society. And it can be more extensive than that, because as Paul was saying, the end part of it is to actually become active in this and actually to do something about it, get new skills, change, engage with others. And there's a lot in this that's very similar to what Claude Steiner was talking about in radical psychiatry. Lots of commonality there. So there is a very substantial political dimension to it. And there needs to be society, if society isn't democratic, it's very difficult for transformational learning to get a toehold, because authority then has to be challenged. And is society up for being challenged? And of course, even in the sort of democratic society we are in, there is a lot going on in the background which is oppressive. and transformational learning is about challenging that oppression. So that's a very important dimension to this.
So, well, any questions before we actually start looking and working our way through the model?
Something that just occurs to me is that, and particularly in those days, doing these sort of things on one's own, having that wherewithal to actually be, make those changes. And given that we're talking about co-creative TA and how we need others, we need the we-ness, we need support. I'm interested in the, how some of those women actually did it.
Yeah. Well, I think that will come out in the process that Paul's going to be exploring.
Very good. Excellent.
Okay. So you should have all got a handout that should have come with the joining instructions. So you should be able to get this on your own screens or second screens or printed versions. But this is basically his process, his 10-stage process. And the first part of it is a disorienting or a disconcerting dilemma. So it's noticing that we're a bit stuck. Yeah. So there's this sometimes this momentary and very odd. What the first thing that he noticed was that a lot of the people in the research that didn't actually get back to the professional careers didn't notice this disorientation, this dilemma. They didn't actually question themselves about the process that they were going through. They were just stuck in a process of wanting to get back to the professional careers and not being able to do it, and failing and carrying on repeating the same process.
Yeah. And of course, that sort of links very much to how we think of people who are stuck in their script, isn't it? When we think of somebody who's very script bound and who is just in their script and they're just responding from their script, they just stay there and endlessly repeat, endlessly engage in the rackets and engage in the games, and nothing changes. And of course, if you're in that space and you're not actually, you don't have a disorientating dilemma, there's nothing to push you to change. And of course, I think from a co-creative perspective, we would see physis as driving, for some people, a sense of actually there is something not right here. This isn't okay. How come I won't change?
So Mesero talked about noticing that dilemma being the first stage, because what we tend to do, because of our defenses, because of our rackets, because of our frame of reference, because of our script, when we apply for a job that we used to do 6 years ago and we don't get an interview, I'll apply for another one. I'm getting really annoyed that I'm not getting an interview. So I'll apply for another one. I'll change the CV. So doing small things, but still doing the same thing without saying, why am I not getting an interview? Yeah. I used to be whatever it was, 6 or 7 years ago, 8, 9 years ago, I shouldn't have a problem getting an interview. And what he was saying was the ones that succeeded really noticed and questioned why.
Yeah. And of course, the important quality there is that there is you know, an ability to stand back and develop a self-reflective capacity around what's happening, rather than just being lost in it. This is what happens to me, always happens to me. This is how it is. This is my life. It will never change.
I think what we also sent out, I think, was John James's game plan. I don't know. It's not. A lot of people aren't aware of John James's game plan. So I don't know whether you've come across it or not.
Yeah, like me.
But for me, it's a great way of thinking about games rather than Byrne's Formula G, which I could never get my head around. Yeah. It's just too complex for me. But John James's game plan is really good. You know, why am I here? Why does this always happen to me? Yeah. Why do I always get it wrong or not get it right, or get in trouble or whatever it is? And then it's a process about John James's game plan. Asks what's going on intrapsychically, not necessarily interpersonally. So this is where I keep ending up. And it's a game because we're reinforcing our frame of reference, we're reinforcing our script beliefs. And what John James's game plan does is ask us about what's going on up here. What do I think is going on in the head of the other person? Yeah. So, and that's what he talked about was, what are the secret messages?
Paul, can I just interrupt? When I saw the secret messages, it reminds me of, is it the solution focused work?
There is a solution focused work that gets underneath. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of a little bit.
Yeah.
Immediately. Thank you.
Yeah. So the solution focused work is very much about creative problem solving. Yeah. Which is creative problem solving is, are you actually asking the right question? Yeah. Because very often when we do problem solving, we look for a solution that deals with the effect and not the cause. So a solution focused problem solving, creative problem solving, is actually asking the question, what's the problem? Not what's the effect. And actually, it's probably not the problem that you think it is. What's the problem that's causing that problem? Yeah.
Can I just ask again? You know, I'm fascinated with the word intrapsychic, and I keep coming up. It keeps coming up, and I just want to keep redefining it. Well, you know, what is the use in all of this? And I know it's transformational, because is it not working within and out? So sort of to do with the behaviour as well, isn't it?
Well,
a little bit.
The behaviour is the outcome from the intrapsychic process.
Right.
So if you think of traditional ego state model, structural ego state model, very often what we are doing, we're running rackets and playing games because we want to reinforce our script beliefs, and the script beliefs are generally issues between parent and child ego states, so that generally they're impasses. Yeah. So the intrapsychic process that is going on when we're running rackets is we are running a racket. We are running an intrapsychic process which confirms our script belief. Yeah. So we notice things. We discount what we're actually doing. So we don't account for what's actually going on. We do a discount because it's based on reconfirming our script belief that I always get it wrong. I'm never good enough. Yeah. I'm not important. And we don't notice it because it's it's defensive and it's out of awareness. And what Mezirow was talking about was questioning that process and bringing that. So his 10-point process works towards identifying what that intrapsychic process is that's going on. So what's the script belief, basically? And when we get into the next item 2, it's about what's the racket feeling covering, what's the real feeling that the racket feeling's covering up. So what's the reinforcing behavior, which is the reinforcing behavior is not getting a job interview because I'm not good enough, really. Yeah. So what's behind the reinforcing memory, the racket behavior, rackety behavior.
Another way of thinking about that's about, you know, checking out the assumptions behind the frame of reference.
And that is often where we begin to need to get somebody else involved, because we can't see what we can't see.
Yep.
Yeah. We've done
Sense.
20 or 30 or 40 years of reinforcing our script belief that we're not important, or we never do it right, or whatever it is. And we know we're not important at an unconscious level, so we don't question it. We just shrug it off. So those are the secret messages that are in John James's game plan. They're actually inviting us to think about the script beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah. James, you want to do any more?
No, I'm fine actually.
Okay, so should we have a look? What about you? Has that made sense so far, everybody? Yeah, I'm getting nods.
Right.
Thumbs up. Yeah, great.
Making those notes.
Let me do share screen again. To the second week, the second bit. Item 2. So this is the self-examination. This is the internal process, intrapsychic process that's going on for us. So noticing that I'm stuck and I'm here again, it's a pattern. Why do I always end up here? So what am I feeling? Yeah. So why do I feel stuck? What is it that I'm actually feeling underneath the racket? Underneath the racket feeling. And the 4 feelings that Mezirow mentions are very often racket feelings. Yeah. And it's, you know, I've been working with these for a lot of years, and Mezirow actually puts in his number 2. Examine our self-examination about feelings of fear, anger, guilt, or shame. And actually, my experience is that whoever I'm working with, they feel one of these as a racket feeling. And they don't go any further initially. So this process is about, okay, whatever it is that you're coming up with, so you're feeling angry or shamed or you're feeling scared, if that's the racket feeling, what's underneath it, and how can we help you, or how can you get underneath and explore what's underneath that?
Because there's quite a decision point there, isn't there, between do you stay in script, or do you start to wonder what else might be going on? I think this is the sort of critical point at which you begin to think, I wonder what else might be happening here.
So it's about getting through that that defensive screen, that non-conscious defensiveness, and exploring what's underneath. And co-creative TA, if you think about the co-creative diamond, about where we both are in this field that we've generated, is one of us in the past and one of us present, or are we both past, or are we both present? And that's where the therapist, the supervisor, the teacher can help explore and the defensiveness. So begin to get underneath this impasse and begin to expose the impasse. And what, again, my experience has been that with a bit of help and support, and noticing and sharing the noticing, the person can access a feeling of fear, anger, guilt, or shame that they hadn't noticed before. So, well, you know, I'm feeling really angry. Yeah, and underneath, it's not, the anger's covering the shame. Or the anger's covering the scare, or the anger's covering the guilt. Or I'm feeling shamed or guilty and it's covering pent up anger. Yeah. And although Mezirow talks about all the fear, anger, guilt, or shame, my experience is that all of these four are usually present. Not just one of them. And certainly, again, from my experience, supervisees will clock the first one of the real feelings, and then they'll struggle and get to and then notice a second one. And if we persist, they get to the third one, and eventually it may take some time, weeks and months, to get to the fourth one. Because it's like so we run rackets that cover up rackets that cover up rackets that cover up rackets, because we are so good and we are so well defended. And so this is a process of peeling the onion off, basically. And you don't, it depends what the person wants. If it's just some transformational learning and change, great. If we're doing sort of script work and we're doing therapeutic work, then keeping going with this is a fantastic way of supporting identification of script beliefs and injunctions. Yeah.
But I wonder if there's a difference. I wonder whether it's just degrees of working. You can work at various levels of this material. And in various contexts as well.
So it depends how deep you want to go and how deep you want to go with yourself, how deep your client or whoever is wanting, or your supervisor is wanting you to help them go to. And the other thing is not to go too fast.
Yeah. And actually what we're talking about doesn't refer to any particular TA field.
No.
Yeah.
And I think just to remind you that when we're doing this Mezirow process, doing this transformational change process, we're not doing regression. We're working in the present. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're working with the diamond. So if it's a supervisor or a client or whatever, then we're bringing into that field, into that space, the noticing about what present me, past you, or past me, present you. So we are bringing into the field the noticing. So we're working in the transference. We're not working with the transference. Because we are sharing our noticings. Come on, Sparkles.
So is the aim to notice when one of you's gone to the past and bring it back into the present?
Yeah.
I haven't quite understood the difference between working with and in.
Yeah, I think I struggle with that sometime too.
Yeah, I do struggle with that concept.
Yeah, but it is that process of clocking yourself or clocking when the other might have shifted. It is about being able to just stand back from our process that little bit to then be able to notice it in a non-defensive way. And then we can invite the other back.
Yeah, okay.
Tudor and Summers in their original article looked at and gave examples of the therapist being vulnerable, and bringing their curiosities into the room. Yeah, the transferences that they are noticing that they're picking up, as well as being curious about what the client has brought in the room. Because I know before James says it, James will always say, what's the therapist up to?
Yeah, because and again, this is the bit about it about it being co-created, because both people or in a group, we are all up to something. We all have our own process, and neither one of us is privileged to being, the one that sorted out all their games. That's a joke. That doesn't happen. So we're all, and just being curious about what are we up to here is just so important a part of this process.
So is that the same as I can't remember who said it, but having one kind of 1 foot in and 1 foot out, just having that kind of one foot in what's going on and being also aware of what's going on just outside of that kind of.
I think that's one of the original definitions of empathy, what you're talking about, and I think it goes beyond that, because it is about bringing the therapist process into the room as well, and not hiding behind some professional stance. It is, and it's about acknowledging what's actually happening between us in the here and now. What's happening in the room. It's not that I the therapist am fantastic, and I don't play games, and and anything that's happening is the client, or the trainee, or the supervisee, or the manager, or wherever you are. It is a much more. It isn't possible to even off the power dynamics, but it's being attentive to those power dynamics and acknowledging that both of us are in the room and both of us can be processing in a certain way. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a really good metaphor analogy about 1 foot in and 1 foot out, because Tudor and Summers, and Keith Tudor probably more in particular in some of his articles, will talk about being, as the therapist or the supervisor, being in past me, past you.
Yeah.
And that's, to my mind, that's the 1 foot in and 1 foot out, because we need to stay aware that we are in the past.
Yes.
Yeah. And the thing with the empathy and getting the benefit from it is working out when's the best time to come out of the past.
Yeah.
So when do we think we've got something potentially here, we've had a good explore, and it's time to bring us back into the present, then we can explore what was going on in the present.
Yeah. And I guess that's quite a bit of the art of it, because as many of you who've been in practice in any way will know that people are at different places in their capacity to engage with what's going on in the immediacy of the here and now relationship. So that needs to be gauged, just because if you do move too quickly, of course, the client could become very defensive very quickly. So that's, need to sort of be very compassionate around that area.
And I guess if you move too slowly, then you can both just sort of sit in comfort, which doesn't encourage change.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can do. Yes, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. So it is about, being willing to challenge and then notice what happens. And also to be aware, of course, when it does go wrong, of course, we can and do repair.
Sometimes more learning comes from that repair than anything else.
Indeed, that's usually the case.
Okay, so I'm conscious of the time. We said we'd have a break about halfway through. Just chatting in the break about these first two bits being the really important bits of the process. Noticing the dilemma and then exploring what's going on, and trying to get through those defenses. And it is really important to get some help, because we can spend days and weeks and not get anywhere because we're so well defended. Our makeup has worked really well to keep our frame of reference in place. So we do need that diamond effect where the other person can notice. I think James was saying, what's not congruent here? Yeah, you were talking about that when we were just before people joined, didn't you, James? Do you want to say a bit more about that?
Yeah, because I was just saying it comes from a person-centered perspective, but Carl Rogers talked about if for somebody to engage in therapy, i.e. to begin that process of change, they need to experience incongruence and anxiety. Because if you don't, there'll be no motivation to change. You'll just be stuck in your script and, it's, my script's shit, so just carry on. This is how life is. So the incongruence, and you can translate that incongruence into TA is where we're experiencing things and we're heavily discounting, and we're aware, we have an awareness that there's a discomfort going on inside us which will manifest quite often, I think, as anxiety, that things aren't quite right, So that when that starts to manifest, that's a beginning of that process of change. And it will usually manifest as anxiety.
And it's also this, I'm stuck again, I'm here again. Yeah, why am I always here?
Yeah.
So we can describe that as, our patterns, because everything that I think of in life is always revolving around patterns.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's also a lot to do with transformation, isn't it? And change, because I've moved into a new workplace, and I can either transform into it, or I can look at my scripty stuff and say, well, there I go again. Plonked myself into another place, and they don't like me, and they're doing this, they are doing that, and they don't listen to me. So I can hear all
Just lost you. Yeah, just lost you, Harple.
How can I do this co-creatively? This is really good for me. Sorry if my internet's a little bit unstable. It's I think this fits more than any of the other models that you've done so far. It's just making sense. And you know how you started off with the weeness. I'm working on it, and I'm introducing that into even the children I work with as well, getting a sense of the okayness and we've got to do this together and be one. So I'm sorry if I'm rambling. I found this really fascinating. I've already written 6 pages of notes while you've been talking. That's got to be good. It just makes it's really exciting, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I really want to try and transform rather than go back into that negativity. And for me, it started with all the the grouping. Oh my God, here we go again. I'm in a group, you know, the old forming, norming and storming. And every now and then there's one person in there that's, I don't like this, I can hear it, and I'm going to keep doing that. And then I'm thinking, oh, do you know what? I'm doing TA and I'm feeling really confident and I'm really good and I'm just going to keep at it. So that's me talking to myself, you know.
Yeah.
Because it's just fascinating to know that there is a transformation going on and that it's a process. I can either stay in it or I can change it or I can ride through it and still try and implement a few things along the way and get them to listen somehow. You know, it's a hard place, I can tell you. And I want to kill them half the time. But by staying in it, because my script would be, sod this, I'm out of here. You don't like me, I'm going. And I don't need this. But instead, to work with it, I'm saying, I need to learn here. And if I don't transform, then I will never change in the future. It's much deeper than that for me, and I don't mind saying that. So I've got to learn to be a leader and you know, and stay with it, so, you know, and be my present self.
Well done.
Yeah, it's
not easy, but well done.
Really, thank you. And that's why this is so important for me to do tonight, because yeah, the title just was screaming at me. I thought, I've got to be here. I've had a hard day with autistic children, but I will be here. Thank you.
Right.
Anyway.
That's great. Yeah.
It's interesting, actually. One of the things that strikes me is it's not just about individual transformational change or workplace transformational change. As we've been talking, I'm thinking about this on a global scale. It's like all of the areas at the moment, the challenging the social norms, challenging the political regimes. It's all transformational change in process, or perhaps not. You know, who knows how it'll pan out, but I'm hearing it so loudly today as we're talking this through.
Yeah, because this process works out on just so many different levels. So many levels. Yeah. Yeah.
So what James and you are talking about is 3 and 4 on this. You know, listening to you, Harpo, then, you know, I would normally do this, and you know, this I always get to this point, and yeah, and they're not doing this, and they're not. Well, hang on a minute. Is it me? Is it? Have I got something wrong? Yeah. And then I always struggle with his number 4. What the hell does it mean? One's discontent and the process of transformation assured. I mean, come on, say it in real language. And I think what it is what James is saying. There's a non-congruence. If I'm discontented, but if I'm not going to be stuck in this, I'm going to have to do something. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I'd like to just go back and stress point 3, which is the critical assessment of assumptions. And maybe Harple's sort of, you know, a thing here is that things that, you know, are, you know, disconcerting. And so you start to examine, well, what are my assumptions going on here? Is part of that process. And that can be, you know, going back to what Sandra was saying, the different levels, you question the assumptions at lots of levels. And depending what your problem is, you might stay at one particular or a couple of levels. But it can go all the way through to societal levels. But that challenging, wondering what your critical review of your assumptions is so important. And that's that really starting to destabilize a frame of reference. That's just such an important aspect of this. And it's a major step into healing in many ways.
And it's at that stage that you should get really bothered, because you might have to start trying to work out what the hell the discount matrix really is. Yeah. Yeah.
Does anybody understand it?
Well, no, because where is it? Yeah. Yeah, where am I? What is it that I'm discounting? What is it that I'm not accounting for? You know, I know I'm stupid. I know I'm never going to make anything of myself. I know I'm not important. Yeah, I know I always get it wrong. I know I never, whatever I do is never good enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, come on, start accounting, start being self-compassionate. Yeah. What do you mean you never get anything right? Well, I have got that right, and I did get that right. So it's back to this questioning, this intrapsychic defensiveness about keeping those script beliefs in place.
Yeah. But that's where the next bit of this kicks in, doesn't it, Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Because then the need to share it.
Yeah. So moving on. Once we've got this courage and hang on a minute, I don't need to carry on doing this. What can I do? This is where you move and pick up on a creative problem solving process, which is exploration of options. And one of the things with problem solving that's not creative problem solving is that we look for relying on things that we've experienced in the past. So we would fall back into maybe picking up another parental ego state. Yeah. Somebody else or somebody what we've seen somebody else do differently, or what we've tried differently and it didn't work. So what we should really be doing is really doing the wide open lens. What is it that I'm not thinking about? What are the options that I'm not really considering? One of the James and myself talked about sending this out, but we decided not to do. One of the things that I often use and support people with is the functional fluency model.
Oh, I like that model. Could you share it? I can't remember where mine is, but that's the one I was trying to think of last week, and I couldn't remember the name.
If you give me a minute, I might be able to find one. Here we go. Let's see if I've got one. Let's see what this is. Oh, here we go. Yeah. It's a bit complicated, this the one that I've got, but through it. Okay.
Brilliant.
I need to make that a bit bigger, Paul.
I'll do my best. How do I? I think I need to go back out, don't I, to increase it. Let me.
If you just.
Go. Oh,
Paul, is it in Word?
I'm there, Jen. It's okay.
Okay.
There we go.
Brilliant.
Okay. So we'll just look at the positive modes. Yeah. We'll forget the negative ones. So one of the things that that's really good about functional fluency is that it's got these 5 positive modes in the middle. The accounting mode is very much an integrating adult. But we've got these other 4 positive modes about structuring and nurturing and cooperative and spontaneous. So there would be, to my mind, there will be parts of, if we are in our integrating adult, we would be looking into our introjects in our parent ego state, and we'd be looking at the parent and adult and child of the introjects, because there may be some really cooperative behaviours there, or some spontaneous, unusual behaviours. And we would also be going through our integrating adult into our child ego state and exploring our past experiences that have worked for us in terms of structuring and nurturing and supporting and being cooperative, and being spontaneous. And one of the things that I particularly do, because I do workshops on creative problem solving, and I use this to support people to look for options. It's a way of forcing options that are not being considered. So if you use these and you force yourself to find 2 new structuring options, 2 nurturing options, 2 cooperative options, and 2 spontaneous options, you will find ones that you wouldn't otherwise have considered. Because if you've ever done a TIFF, what you find is that everybody has one of these that is more used than others. So we have a tendency to use one of these modes, and it's like a default. So if we want to change, we will always do something different structurally. We'll change some part of the process, or we will tend to go to providing some support or getting some support, or we might move to being more cooperative and getting on with people better. So we tend to, in solving problems, we tend to use one of these modes as a default, and we ignore the others. So we don't actually come across all of the options. We discount options without actually getting there. So it's a really good model for using to try and force some options that we wouldn't normally think of.
And I think looking for options is really useful when you can do it with other people, because other people won't have your blindness to what options might work. And I think that can be incredibly useful, where we can lever other people's minds into helping us see in a more full way what is available to us. And it comes back to what Paul talked about earlier, where we can, we are not naturally, but we've learned to be blind to certain aspects of ourselves that are either in past I and unconscious, or maybe even very non-conscious and integrating adults. And it can be really useful when we engage with others.
And this is where our drivers have an impact as well here, or our working styles or personality adaptations. Because we will default into our driver behavior. So we'll default to finding a solution where we are in control if we're being strong, or that we're supporting others if we're pleasing others, or just do something if we're in try hard, or we'll do it quickly if we're in hurry up. And or we'll spend ages procrastinating to make sure we get the right answer, and be perfect. So using that model helps us to get away from being driven. Come on, James, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, when we do this with others, in fact, thinking of it working co-creatively, it enables this process to work much more easily, because it is actually almost impossible to do it on your own. I don't know about you, Paul, thinking about, I'm not sure it is very, some people will be able to do it, but many will not, because it just depends on the, how deep your scripting is, as to whether you can access the material that's out of awareness.
And of course, if you're very strong, you wouldn't think of doing it with somebody else.
No, indeed.
You just keep going and not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
How are we doing, guys? Yeah. Any questions or curiosities? Yeah. Okay. Should we carry on, James?
Mm.
Now let's. I need to come out of that one. Close that one down. Okay. Go on, James.
What?
I'll have a rest. I'll let you go.
I see. Yeah, planning a course of action's the next one. And then, course of action will involve in number 7, acquiring knowledge and skills and implementing one's plans. And this is, what's really important here is moving into very much more of an active phase of actually doing something about what's getting in the way of change. So having looked at your options and explored, what can enable you to move forward, it is then to start to make some choices about this, about what you can then do to move forward.
And again, from a co-creative perspective, this is about sharing the responsibility, being in relationship with somebody else that you feel safe with, yeah, and getting that support, the encouragement, the positive regard.
Yeah, and it is about, at that point, getting positive strokes for what you're doing and being able to stroke yourself as well for what you're doing, and that you are actually moving out of this and taking steps to do that.
Because
can I ask a question?
No, definitely not. No.
Oh, okay.
Go on, carry on. Yeah.
In a co-creative way, how do you work with someone who is scared to make the change because of childhood stuff?
I think you again, if you're thinking about it in terms of this process, you need to go back to the earlier stages and work with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think at this stage, if you're still scared of making the change, I think some element of scare will always be maintained, will be there, because that doesn't suddenly vanish. But where you feel so scared that it's inhibiting you, I think that needs to be dealt with, probably, around 4, and exploring that in a shared environment, and starting to get a real handle about what are the feelings here. Because if the fear is actually, going back to part 2, is actually a racket feeling, until that's explored and you've got underneath that, you're not going to engage in doing anything.
Yeah.
And you won't get past the options either, because you'll be discounting like fury around it. So you won't hear it. It won't be available to you. Because you're right, a lot of people do have some quite strong fears, and the bulk of the work is done earlier on.
Right, fair enough.
I think once you've done the emotional work around this learning, I think the doing of it becomes relatively easy, or easier.
Thanks.
Yeah, and actually, an example of that comes to my mind, because Paul and I, with 4 others, meet as a group, and we actually spend a lot of time processing. And actually, once we've done that, usually the work we have to do is done very fast, because actually we've done the emotional work, and it frees us up to then do the work. So it can seem quite odd in a way that we spend a lot of time processing, and then the last bit of it will come together very quickly as we move through those later stages. Would you say, Paul?
Yeah, I would agree. I'm thinking back to what Paul brought up about the 1 step in and one step out.
Okay.
Because if somebody is scared, one of the options, depending where they're at, one of the options is to help them to explore what's scary about the present.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what is it you're scared of? And is that really scary? You know, and try and support them to recognize that the scare is an archaic scare, not a current scare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is going back to, as James says, that earlier part of the process.
Yeah.
So I guess this isn't a linear process.
No,
No, I didn't.
No. It sort of moves all over the place, but it's a general, you know. It's like a walk through the woods. We're going to get to the end of the woods eventually, but sometimes we go for blind alley and we've got to retrack. And
yeah, I guess in fact, as you move on to other stages, as they falter, I guess you then go back and rework in order to move forward.
Yeah.
So is that when you were talking about, James, the going back to the assumptions?
Yes, because if they're not completely, if they're not largely tied up, explored and come into awareness, they will then get in the way.
Yeah.
So it is about, you know, unpicking those. And maybe if the process isn't running as smoothly and it isn't moving through, there is something's happened somewhere where it hasn't been opened up enough. And probably maybe need to go back and critically review what's going on for you. Maybe explore in more depth what the racket feelings are and what's underneath them.
It's
really useful, thank you.
Support using the John James game plan, supporting them to re-explore what the secret message is.
Yeah.
What's going on? What's the message?
Fantastic.
Because inevitably you think of racket feelings, they are very layered. They can be very, very layered. And it might be that you need to go go deeper down through the different racket feelings to get to what lies underneath them and what the script beliefs underneath them are.
So, I think again with these towards 6 and 7 and 8, it's really helpful to not do this on your own. Whether if you've got a supervisor or a friend, somebody you're in a relationship that is supportive and present-centered and is prepared to challenge you in a nice way, and not just agree with you, but using the diamond to notice and bring to your attention what they're noticing. Getting feedback, provisional training, new roles. How do you think I'm doing? I did this and this happened. And, I mean, the other thing that James was talking about was getting the positive strokes for the change and for the new things that you're doing, or that your client is doing. And of course, that's really important because they won't be getting the negative strokes that they've been used to. Yeah. So there will be an absence of all those wonderful negative strokes that we used to get to support our old script belief, and we're not getting them anymore. So it's like a vacuum. So it's really important to provide that support, the positive strokes, to fill that. Otherwise, the tendency is the rubber banding to start happening.
Yeah. And I think, being with others who are engaged and who will support a transformational learning process, is really key to this. I think if you're in an environment which continues to negatively stroke you, or where, for example, the sort of conditions we think about in terms of co-creative TA, and there's not mutual positive regard, this wouldn't work. You would end up getting too defensive. You know, why would you be willing to expose yourself in that environment? You wouldn't do it.
Which makes me realise how difficult it is for people who are in toxic families to change.
You know, and in toxic, you know, business life, toxic organizations, you know, this is indeed true. Toxic societies. I think that's just very true. And Harpal, I think, was talking about being in a new work environment. There's no guarantee that work environment would necessarily support transformational change.
No, but I suppose if we want change, we've got to, you know, to make that change, Gandhi. But, you know, so I know I want change, and I'm going to be that change. And I've got to, I suppose, I've got to use the tools to transform, like I said before, because I've changed an awful lot. And I see, this is why I'm doing educational TA. There's so much I want to change, and it's probably not going to change, but as long as I'm changing myself along the way, it helps me. And, you know, doing this workshop this evening, again, it's my support mechanism, so I can go in tomorrow and hold my head up high and think it's okay. I've got a life beyond this workplace, which seems to be stuck in its ways a little bit.
Yeah,
if not a lot.
So, yeah, and you know, Steiner quite often talked about that when we were in environments like that, we need to get together with people who will support us. And I think Mesereau is saying the same thing, and I think it's definitely something that the co-creative TA is saying, that we need to get and be with people who will support us. Sorry, Jane, would you want to say something?
It's just that I just want to share my thinking and maybe kind of maybe you challenge it, but I'm just aware that I can hear this on a cognitive, but I'm thinking about the unconsciousness, and I think the racket analysis, I get that you go really deep as far as the racket is and what's covering, and to a point that can be going into sort of very unconscious processes to get there. And then I was thinking about, you know, when we go to 5 and 10, I think it was, you know, getting the community around us. And I think that we have to kind of, I'm just making a statement of how I'm thinking about it, being very aware of ourselves on unconscious processes and how that we could actually inadvertently kind of not help script change and transformation, and how we can impede it. Now, I love games and game enactments and analysis, and I think in a co-creative way, I think that's what we're talking about, really. I don't know if I'm completely off beam here, but maybe.
No, I don't think so. And I think it's a really good thing to think about. I think what you're saying is that the potential for what is out of awareness to get in the way is there. And I think it is there. And I think we, you know, Paul talked about the co-creative diamond, and that looking at that process of where we can both end up being in a very, what Tudor and Summers call a co-transferential place, is really important to acknowledge that and work with it. Because the work, that sort of work, doesn't go away.
No,
calling it co-creative TA.
I suppose I just wanted to bring it in there because it was starting to feel a bit like, because those are the, I think what your comment earlier, James, was that the kind of suddenly change will take place when we attend to the first 4 stages. And I think,
yeah, and you have to remember my talk is as a group of people who have been in therapy for many years and who have been working in TA for many years, and so we're a bit of an unusual sample, if you like, if you compare that with some people who have no training.
Or other organisations, but I think I'm on beam here.
Well, I think it's really useful for all of us to bring our perspectives in, because we all have a different window on this, and it's valuable.
You
know, even if it does challenge, that's fine.
Sometimes we are the support group. If someone is in quite a toxic family, I'm thinking of a particular client that I've got, and her support network is her family, and they are pretty toxic, and she's trying to work out how to survive in them and grow, and she's pulling away from them, but she hasn't got anybody else at the present moment. So I am that support group. So it's not so easy for people, you know. When I was in a toxic workplace, I chose to leave, so that was my choice. I could leave, but you can't. It's not so easy to cut step with your family. It's much harder.
Yeah, well, I used to work with young people, sort of 11 to 18, and you work with them, and sadly, they have to go home. And they go home into the environment which has caused them to have the problems that they're coming to see you about.
Exactly.
And I think it's really tough. But they do get a completely different experience of another adult who is not like the adults they're enduring at the moment. But it's potentially very difficult for them because their survival depends on their family.
Yeah.
It's tough.
And I'm really conscious about what Harkel's been saying about, you know, she's determined to change and determined to get the organisation working differently. And sometimes that can be scripted. So, you know, there is a time when we go beyond this process and we're actually back into script because we're trying to do the impossible.
Yeah, I think that's what I was sort of hinting at, really. Because actually, if you're in a toxic organization that is completely defensive, you know, what are your options? It's really, you know, this process of transformational change needs the sort of co-creative principles at work, which means everybody needs to be engaged in that. And I think in many organizations that will not be the case, sadly.
And I definitely hear that. And do you know, I suppose what's keeping me there is I've said to myself, okay, I'm going to stick this out until July, but I'm going to take away everything I have learnt and have built up and how I've transformed, I'm going to keep using that word, into this group. It has been very, very hard. And and I value what's been said. And I think Sparkles has touched upon some of the things that are quite, you know, touching my heart at the moment. I'm thinking, yep, I understand that bit. But I suppose what's going to keep me there is what is going to be my next step. And the reason why I did this again tonight is I'm in my first year of educational TA, but everything I've learned so far has taken me to lots of levels, and I'm thinking, you know what, I don't think I'm going to need another year on ed TA. I feel I need to do something else, and that is this is where I'm heading now. I don't have to do what everyone else does. Oh, if you do 1 year, no, you need to do another one to get the diploma or this and that. So I'm already breaking out, and I'm thinking I don't need to do the norm. I don't need to do what's supposed to be next. So I suppose I will say again, this has been very important for me this evening, because I'm on another transformational journey where, you know, as to where I'm going to go next. And I really do like the co-creational, you know, side of it. So if I email you or whatever, I suppose I want to do more on that and stay with education in a different way, because that's co-creative, isn't it?
Yeah. And I really hear you grasping that aspect of transformational change where you're not willing to accept that, well, you just do 1 year, then you do another, and then you do this, and then you do that. And what you're doing is you're making up your mind what you want to do and where you want to take your life. And that's because you're creating what you want here.
And I love hearing that. Thank you, James, because that's me. I want to do things my way. It's the freedom to learn, and that's what I've learned about TA education, you know, and it's going to be my way or the highway. So yeah, and you know, it's so nice to hear that in response. I feel like it's not even parental, but I feel like you're the two dads of this group at the moment. So I feel really heard, because I probably wouldn't be with my own dad at the moment. He wouldn't understand, bless him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
but I can hear you're driving forward to do what you want and need to do. And that
And I'm
is,
not sure what that is yet, but I know it's going to be different.
yeah. And I think that the thing with I think when we think about change from a co-creative perspective, we quite often talk about moving to a place where we create the opportunity for possibilities.
Mm.
And one of the difficulties about it is we have to then be prepared to stand in the unknown and see what comes up.
I've been doing that most of my life, so it's not unknown to me. So yeah, I've always been quite a temporary worker, because I don't like to be committed, and I don't mean that I've got issues about commitment, but I certainly have got commitment issues with work, because it doesn't always work for me, and I don't have to take on board all of the unnecessary politics that go along with it.
Indeed.
Because I just hate politics. So there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Lovely to hear your passion.
Okay, so if we come back to the end of the process, building the competence and self-competence, so positive regard, self-compassion, accounting for what we're doing and how we're doing it, and how we're changing and how things are different, and accounting for the differences. And this process will generate script changes. It will be pushing out some of the old script beliefs, and what it will be doing is bringing in some new positive script aspects. So we'll be beginning to generate positive script beliefs about the fact that we are important, or that we can get things right, or we are appreciated, or whatever it is, that we will be generating some positive script beliefs and replacing some of those old, archaic, out-of-date negative ones. Comments? James, do you want to add anything?
No, I don't think so. I'm interested in listening to what others are making of this.
So if we follow through with that into number 10, again, this always used to get me, like number 4, a reintegration into one's life on the basis of conditions dictated by one's new perspective. Wow, that's a big mouthful. I mean, what it's saying is that the changes that we've made and the learning and the change in the frame of reference, the positive parts of it become non-conscious. So they become non-conscious processes that are positive instead of negative. Yeah.
Replacing the rackets and the script that we had in the first place.
Okay, we're replacing the negative script beliefs and the rackets to support them with positive script beliefs and positive rackets to support those. Yeah.
That's definitely a mouthful.
I've struggled with the rackets.
Yeah, me too.
What you struggle with?
The positive rackets.
Oh yeah, there's lots of those. Have you not noticed them?
No.
Okay, maybe you should look for them. So when you are reinforcing the fact that you're really sparkly and you're good, yeah, and you're good at your job and you're good at supporting people and you're appreciated, you'll be running rackets that support those because they have positive script beliefs. Byrne said that we run games and rackets to support our frame of reference and our script beliefs. So if we have positive script beliefs, we run positive rackets and positive games. So the outcome, the payoff, is not a negative payoff, it's a positive payoff, because it reinforces a positive script belief. Graham's, go on, James.
I was just going to say, because those rackets and those positive games are held within integrating adults.
And in integrated adults, you have got non-conscious processes in the adult ego state.
Yeah. And the non-conscious means they are available, can be available to consciousness, whereas material that's in archaic ego states, which is unconscious, is defended against and is not available. That's just getting a bit technical about the definition of the words.
Yeah. And Graham Summers, particularly in his dynamic ego states chapter, talks about the process that we go through of transformational change. He may not use those words, but that's what he's talking about. And he talks about our non-conscious, unconscious defenses, being non-conscious and defended, and what through this process, we bring the defended process and defended and the bits and the racket feelings into consciousness. Yeah. So those defensive processes are no longer non-conscious. So they've moved from non-conscious defensive process to a conscious defensive process. Because we've noticed them by step 2 or step 3, exploring those feelings. Yeah. So we've gone from non-defended non-conscious to conscious defended, and then we do the action and change, go through the process, and we've moved to conscious non-defended process. Yeah. And then with repeated doing it, we move to a non-conscious non-defended process. And that's where we start running positive rackets and playing games with positive outcomes.
So would you say we never step out of script, we just change our script?
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about co-creative script, which is that it is co-created, and it's an ongoing narrative. It's a story that we tell ourselves, and we can change the story. We change the story by the transformational change.
Yeah, and Mezirow talks about that a lot, about how, how we are as people is created in conjunction with other people. We don't do it by ourselves. We are intimately tied up with each other, embedded in our various intersubjective spaces.
And the co-created TA comes in because we won't do it. We can't get to this through this process unless we generate that non-defensive, present-centered we-ness field.
Yeah.
Because if we're not both present-centered, it's gonna fall apart at some point. So that's what James was talking about with our group. That we explore the process in a present-centered way, in a non-defensive way, which enables us to get to bring the defensive non-conscious stuff into awareness. We bring it into that space. We bring it into the co-created field and expose it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the process about when I think, both Keith and Graham talk about it, is talking about when the past emerges in the present, that naturally happens, when the environment is non-defensive, and when it's a safe environment, then you can allow stuff that you've shut away to become present in the moment, and it then is in a place to work with. And so, as Paul said, sort of quite a long time ago now, it's not about regression. It's about working with the past in the present. So it's a different way of working to, say, for example, maybe a more purely psychoanalytic way of working, or even, I think more psychoanalytic. I think that would be the better comparison. Perhaps Jane would comment on that.
Well, I think there's some psychoanalysts would be working with the past that comes in the present.
Yeah, I think there's quite, like
They're
Stern,
not
like
everyone, into regression. I think that's where I was trying to kind of communicate about in game enactments, the past coming to the present, and I suppose it's the ability of the congruence of adult to bring that, and of the therapist, and I think that because we all know that we think we're an adult sometimes, and then come out of a session thinking, what what was I doing? Crawl to supervision and therapy and work out what went on. But so I agree, and I think some of these psychoanalytic, the more traditional ones that I know, take a very kind of parental type, but I think that as a profession is moving away from my experience anyway.
Yeah, I think it's moved away a lot, hasn't it? I think with the work of, I think starting with Fairbairn and then Kohut and other people, they've moved and then Stern and that group of people he works with, they've moved a long way away from it. But it is a way of working. I wanted just to add something else there, which was about this idea of what goes on out of awareness and what goes on in awareness, because what we've talked about today is transformational change, which is about bringing stuff into awareness. And actually, I believe, within all relationships, quite a lot can go on and stays out of awareness. For example, I'm aware in my own therapy that the change has occurred, which I've never contracted for and never brought into awareness. I've only suddenly thought, oh, I don't do that anymore. Oh, that doesn't bother me anymore. So I think, Graham and I have been talking about how the implicit relationship, the one that's not talked about, actually does have an impact as well as this more conscious process that we're talking about in terms of transformational change using Mezirow.
Is that because maybe you've got to the nub of the issue, so actually they're symptoms of something? Okay.
Yeah, but
you don't actually need to do that anymore because you've dealt with something over here that's actually had a knock-on effect. Is that what you mean?
I'm not sure. I think sometimes symptoms just disappear. And I think, oh, I don't do that anymore.
Is that not the central bit of the loop? I mean, is that not the...
I think so.
That's the space that
I think so. That somehow in that space, other things get let go of and processed out of awareness.
Jessica Benjamin, is that the third? In that Jessica Benjamin article, the third.
I don't know that. Oh, right. Okay.
It's the third person, which is the.
Oh yes, of course.
The space in between.
Yeah.
And I suppose you can call it lots of things. You could call it, if you were religious, you could call it the spirit or whatever. But there's lots of things you could call it. But that's maybe that needs to stay unconscious. I don't know.
Yeah, perhaps some things do. Yeah.
I like the idea of the liminal space, because that's where change can happen, because you're aware. There's that awareness, and that goes quite nicely with the loop that Nicole was talking about as well. Maybe that little tiny bit of space. Yeah. So I'm dipping in and out of that, and I'm thinking, and I don't necessarily have to stay in it. I'm aware that it's there, and that makes me happy because I'm growing, and I know that there is always space to move, change, transform, and that's the way I like to look at it, because that's much more positive than staying in my script and saying life's just awful. I can't seem to change. I can't seem to do anything. So I feel I've definitely come a long way from my scripty stuff, although it is still there, and I feel like a little bit of a child when I'm in the presence of adult children, you know. I mean, you must know this, Paul. It's annoying working with educational people because they are so childish. And I'm not saying I'm not, but when I'm trying to lead, I don't want to be a child. So my mission in this job presently is to stay in my adult. That is my challenge. Stay in your adult and don't go playing into those little games. Aren't I a good girl?
Yeah, and
You strokes, yes, you are.
I'm so good. I know my stuff, yet I feel like such a child when I'm there. But that's the challenge, isn't it? People are people.
Mm-hmm.
And do remember that adults can play as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, only when I say so. I've got to be in control of the games. Yeah, not on my watch. We've got all these children to supervise. You can play later. But yeah, and that's interesting, actually, you said that, because I thought I'd introduce playing a little bit of a game, you know, those icebreakers in the meetings, because they are such children, these 3 adults I have to work with, call them adults. I said, I even wrote that in my agenda. We will play a quick game, and then I put in there 2 to 3 minutes. That's all you're getting. And, you know, just to ease them in, to say, I'm not that bad. I want to connect and I want to, you know, be with you at your level. But then can we get on with the rest of the agenda, you know? But I'm learning also to be a leader. So it's hard. But anyway, yeah, at least I'm persevering for now.
Well, one of the things that Graham Summers will often talk about in this transformational change process, this moving from defended non-conscious through to non-conscious, non-defended, is that when we've talked about, James particularly has talked about having this safe space. And one of the things that Graham talks about is that when we can generate that field, and there's a feeling of safety and it's okay to be vulnerable, what happens is that some of the non-conscious defended stuff, some of the defensiveness disappears. So this defended stuff moves, some of it can move into our pre-conscious, which becomes grabbable, if that makes sense. Easier, it becomes less defended, and it sort of percolates up. So one of the, you know, what James was saying about sometimes, Paul, and I've had the same experience, it's like, wow, I don't do this anymore. And that's, I think, Sparkles, you were talking about, that's because you've done some work somewhere else, and it's sort of knock-on effect has done it. So it's this, maybe it's this, the work we're doing, or we've done in this safe space has allowed some of this defended unconscious stuff to come into our pre-conscious, and out of our awareness, our brains are working on it, in a non-conscious way, but because it's not as defended as it used to be, it's being updated.
And I think the driver for that is physis. I think the driver for that enables that to happen is physis. I think that's when there is that non-defensiveness, physis enables us to then be fully present. We then don't need to defend. We recognize that actually at some level we recognize we are not going to be attacked like we were as children, and we can reveal who we really are to a small extent. We'll play with it and see what happens.
Really interesting, because sorry.
I'll go for it, Suzanne. I've spoken.
No, it's just really interesting because it's like it's a process you use, for example, in osteopathy. You know, you don't necessarily work on the sore bit, you might work on another bit. And I remember discovering as a child that if I was having to sit somewhere very still and I got an itch, if I, you know, on my nose or something, and I couldn't scratch it, if I scratched my knee, then the itch on my nose went away. You know, it's kind of like, it's interesting to think of the parallels in different processes.
Yeah. But actually, it is about the same thing, isn't it? It's about a healing process and how we heal.
Mm.
And, you know, that comes, you know, talk about what is the philosophy of co-created approach. Part of the philosophy, which is not articulated a lot, is that it's an organismic process. It's about organisms and what organisms do. And part of what organisms do is physis, and they heal themselves in provided the conditions are good enough for that to happen.
Can we also say, oh, sorry, I can hear myself. Hold on.
We can hear multiples.
I had two of me going off on one there, and that's just not good. Okay, I was just going to say, is it back to the felt sense or the intra-psychic, what can I say, not so much behaviour, because that for me is more of a shift. If I'm looking at this, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of the focusing. I feel that I've made some changes if it's more internal for me. Does that make sense? Because I can feel it. I can feel the shift, or I can feel the embarrassment, or I can feel, yeah, bye Sparkles, or whoever it is that's going. Yeah, I because that's me also being quite intuitive throughout this, whether it's co-creation or not, or whatever it might be. And that's, am I making sense? You know, the shift of transformation and change.
So I would put that into a Bernian ego state model.
Oh, okay.
As being quietening the child ego state.
Oh.
Reassuring the child that they don't need to be defended anymore.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, I'm conscious of the time.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're enjoying yourself. So,
definitely.
And I'm terrible at working to the end and then having to add some time on to check out. So we've got time to reflect for a minute and share and think about what we're taking away and which bits of our frame of reference have changed. What's been the transformation for you tonight?
I'm going to start, and I'm going to say it's lovely to know that I can do things my way, and through that I'm learning to be the adult that I want to be.
Lovely.
Lovely.
I've really enjoyed this evening. Oh, I can see the cameras.
It's okay, Giselle.
It's okay.
Go for it.
Maybe you can hear me. I was just going to say, I've really enjoyed this evening. And I think my transformation really, well, not, I'm in process. But the thing that I've really been caught by is the non-conscious defensive process. And I'm going to have to watch this again to make sure I understood how that works. But that's very interesting. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Nice to not see you. I mean, not in a funny way. It's nice that you're here, but we've not seen you. Yeah.
I'll take that as best it could be done.
At least you've been here. Yeah.
Yeah.
You found a way. You found a way to deal with what's been going on with your internet and stay with us. So really well done, Chidel.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Even if you do sound something like a Dalek.
Loving the humour, Paul.
Yeah, I just found this massively interesting because it just I kind of struggled with kind of education and the fallout from it. I'm still dealing with it now, really, and it's just like talking through some of this stuff has kind of resonated with me, and the way I've transformed or have grown, and yeah, there's a few bits where I can go, oh yeah, that really kind of like that works for me in a way because I understand it, you know, and oh, I recognize that. So it's been really good evening. I'm really glad I attended, and thank you. Thank you all.
Nice to see you again, Paul.
Thank you.
For me, I think one of the big lines I've written down that's in red and we've got stars around it is the idea that destabilizing our frame of reference is the key to transformational change. And on one level, yeah, of course it is, but it's landed in a different place this evening. So it's been really
nice.
Thank you very much. I'm really enjoying these series.
Brilliant. We are enjoying them as well, aren't we, James?
Yeah, very much so.
It's a win-win.
I think that was key to my learning tonight as well, because I've got a client and my supervisor said something like, you know, interrupt his narrative about himself, which is essentially, and I keep thinking, what on earth does she mean? I'm thinking about it, and this has given me a bit more of an understanding.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, James.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll go next. Thank you, both of you, James and Paul and the group, but also James and Paul for a really nice paced, clear presentation. So really appreciate that. For me, the transformation is that I think I just, because it was so, I'm kind of playing with it more and more, and it was placed and clear, and so yeah, there's a lot to this, but thank you.
Yeah. And it is all about playing with it, because we all have different perspectives on this.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed this evening, and part of it was this ability to just go through things and play with it, as you said. And I really think I understand Meserov much more than I did before. So the beginnings of transformation are that I'm beginning to apply Meserov to a particular situation I'm in at the moment, and I'm finding it really helpful. Just the last couple of hours have been really insightful for me. So it's been lovely to meet everyone, and thank you, Paul and James, for putting this on. It's absolutely brilliant. It was lovely to meet. It's lovely to meet new people and hear different perspectives. And I look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, James and Paul. It's been absolutely brilliant tonight. When I saw the 10 steps earlier on in the handout, I thought it kind of sort of described my journey in therapy over the last 18 months. And it was great to think that in the co-creative side, my therapist was doing that with me without actually talking about all the terms and terminology, but the two of us worked together in that field. And it all started way back in step one, and we slowly went through it, and it's brilliant just to see it explained the way tonight. So thank you both, and for everybody that's been participating. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to jump in just to say yes, thank you so much. Really enjoyed the evening. It's almost like a lot of the thoughts that I've been having and the explorations I've been making and what I've been thinking about. It's so lovely to hear it framed in a slightly different language, in a different way, but it all ties together beautifully. It makes so much sense to me. It really does. And also the 10 stages, I was looking at it, and I'm in the process of preparing my presentation, which is coming up soon. And it's a reflective inquiry on a particular aspect with a client. And I just realized that looking at those 10 stages, that's exactly sort of the process that I have sort of followed through, you know, working out what is that question that I'm asking about myself, what have I been struggling with, what's been, and then working through that. And it's just an interesting way of looking at it for me. But anyway, thank you so much. Really loved it.
Good.
I'll just add my bit that yeah, I really enjoyed the evening as a new trainee. Literally just this weekend, we were talking about rackets as in the very basic concept of rackets. So to have someone say there's positive rackets is like, it makes me kind of almost laugh out loud, and it's great. It's like a whole new perspective, which I think that's really, I really like doing that. Like, it just gives me new ways to look at. I'm just getting my head around what a racket might be, and sometimes I'm kind of confused, and sometimes I kind of think I have it. And then positive rackets, I literally laughed out loud when that was being discussed in a really good way, because it's like, oh my god, I'm nowhere. I'm absolutely nowhere yet. So it's really really nice just to like add lots of extra strange perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. That was a good thing for me too, particularly. Yeah, the positive records, the idea that you know our frame of reference is always there. We're always working with a frame of reference, and we all have a process, and I think there's this okayness that you're very much communicating. I think I've got such a lot to reflect on from this evening. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, really great.
Yeah, and we always say it, don't we, James? We couldn't have had this tonight if you hadn't joined in.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
yeah,
you know, you've helped generate that field, that co-created field, that positive, non-defended, vulnerable, whatever, transformational field.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. I really want to thank you all for being here. It's been really great to be with you all. It's been really enjoyable.
So it's good night from him.
Until we meet again.
It's good night.
It's wrong way around, wasn't it? It's good night from me. It's good night from me.
Oh, goodbye. Bye from me.
Bye,
everyone. Thank you.
Bye. See you
Bye-bye.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.